From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to The Hub. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. The situation is rapidly unfolding in Ukraine after Russia decided to focus its efforts on the Donbas region. Ukraine said it had reclaimed Irpin, a town near Kyiv, while fighting continues on the ground. Civilians are forced out of their homes and fleeing for their lives. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy told Russian media that Ukraine is ready to discuss its neutrality status and negotiate a peace deal. With the latest round of talks to be held in Turkey, what are the odds of this month-long crisis finding a solution? Will either side make any progress if the conflict still rages on? For more on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we're very honored to be joined at this hour by General Dipankar Banerjee in New Delhi, India. He's a retired Major General and former director and head of the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies. Welcome, sir. Let's talk about the state of the war. Just over a month after the conflict, Russia announced that the first phase of what it calls a special military operation is over. From your vantage point, is Moscow scaling back from its, more ambitious targets? And what was or could have been its original target?
Exactly. I think this operation from the Moscow's perspective has gone very badly. From what one can assess from a distance, Moscow's objective in this campaign against Ukraine would have been to remove the existing political leadership in Ukraine, replace it with a leadership that would be more favorable to Russia, and then through a coercive measure of military force, then dictate the terms to Ukraine. The reason why this operation took place was that Ukraine was shifting more and more towards the NATO. There's pressure from the NATO to take over Ukraine and incorporate that into the NATO, which would then have undermined Russian security very significantly. So naturally, Putin and Russia would not accept that. And there are good reasons why they should not accept that. But the way the operations have been launched by Russia against Ukraine has been extremely disappointing. For somebody like me who have been following the Russian army for the last 50 years, this is not the Russian army that one knew in the earlier times.
How so? I mean, General, I know that you served 36 years in the Indian Army. It's infantry, which is a central regiment for combat. Based on your decades of experience, why did you come to the conclusion that number one, Russia's original goal was to topple Zelenskyy government, and number two, it is an army of Russia that one, did not expect to see over the past years?
Well, firstly, of course, as President Putin had mentioned earlier, that in a speech on the 4th of February, well before the actual operations took place, he had a major speech in which he announced that Ukraine was a part of a Russian mainland, has historically been united. Russian peoples populate both these countries, Russia as well as Ukraine. And so therefore, the entire idea was to bring Ukraine into the main Russian fold, which meant that Ukraine could not be a part of the NATO, which it was developing towards now because of various reasons. And therefore, he wanted to ensure that there would be no threat that would arise to Russia from Ukraine if it were to become a part of the NATO. And so that was the reason, and he announced that on 4th of February in a major speech to his globally. But that is not what the military operations, and accordingly, the military operations that were planned for that purpose was to secure all of Ukraine. And therefore, attacks were launched from multiple directions, including targeting Kyiv, but from a distance. As one could make out, a convoy, a military convoy of about 60 kilometers long was launched from Russia heading towards Kyiv. But now all these military operations did not succeed or did not go as per plan. And history will have to determine, later studies will have to determine and find out as to what were the reasons of this failure. So after a month of this grinding operation, when the Russian army could not achieve its goals of securing even a single major city in the heartland of Ukraine, it announced, the General Staff of the Red Army, Russian Army, announced that no, our main objective was only to secure the Donbas region, and therefore we will focus on this, and operations are going according to plan. No military planner, no military strategic experts anywhere, this side or that side, would accept that argument. It is because the Russian operations did not go, well, I wouldn't say the word failure, but nevertheless did not achieve any of its objectives, that they modified the aim and said that no, we only want to secure the Donbas region and have a negotiation with the rest of Ukraine, and to ensure that Ukraine remains a part of the Russian strategic fold and not a part of the Western orientation. And so it is an afterthought, a change in its strategic objective and modifying it. It was not the original objective.
Okay, basically you're saying this is Russian hindsight to scale back its goal. Let's talk about the diplomatic front. The negotiations have been going on for quite a while. President Zelenskyy said he recognizes that Ukraine may not be part of NATO. And recently he also said that the political status of the Donbas region, Lugansk and Donetsk, are up for debate. He can negotiate all those issues with Vladimir Putin. Do you think President Putin will take up that offer at some point soon?
Well, that is the big question. And as you know, they're meeting today in Turkey to discuss some of these issues. Yes, President of Ukraine has made some major announcements that you mentioned, and which can be the basis of the process forward and to resolve the current situation. I think both sides have realized now it is in everybody's interest all over the world to bring this hostility, this war fighting, to a close at the earliest. Enormous damage is being caused to the civil populations in Ukraine. Cities have been destroyed. 3.5 million Ukrainians have sought refuge in the neighboring countries outside Ukraine, including in Poland and other places. And therefore, it is in the interest of all sides to stop this hostility and then negotiate for a stable situation. And I think this talk that is going to take place in Turkey from today could be the beginning of a process. Even today, the positions are far apart. Turkey discussion will not lead to a solution as yet, but could be the beginning of a process.
General Banerjee, let's talk about China-India relations. Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister made a visit to India to the surprise of many. How do you think this visit made by Wang Yis strengthen or help reposition China-India relations on one hand, and on the other hand, help coordinate China-India relations when it comes to Ukraine?
Yes, now this was a major visit by the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yis, and this was a multiple visit. I think his principal objective in this visit would have been to assess the situation from South Asia as to how the South Asians look at the Ukrainian war, and also to continue to enhance the bilateral relations of China with these countries. He visited Afghanistan, Nepal, India, and therefore this was a very significant visit. But this was a short notice visit. His principal objective was visiting Afghanistan and also to an extent Pakistan, where a lot of things are happening, and also Nepal. So these four country visit in a short period of 2 to 3 days could not achieve very much. But nevertheless, this is, I think, an important process of dialogue with China that is important at this stage. Because of this Ukrainian question, lot of differences are taking place, lot of changes are taking place geopolitically, and for stability and peace in the region, dialogues between major countries and particularly between China and India is important.
Major General Banerjee, let's talk about India-Russia relations, because it is reported that Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will pay a visit to India as well. What is the role of India in perhaps helping mediate the crisis?
No, India is not in the game of mediating the crisis in Ukraine. Of course, it is very much in India's interest to see this conflict come to an end under terms that all sides can agree with and will feel comfortable with, and a situation that will last for some time. But India is not in a position to play a mediating role, but it has good wishes for others. India-Russia relations have been strong and long-lasting. It's talked about since the late 1950s onwards. India-Russian relations have developed in a very positive manner. It continues to remain quite close and intimate in many sense. And so therefore, India-Russia relations is extremely important, both for India, Russia, and perhaps also for the world.
I'm also curious about, the triangular relations between Washington, Beijing, and New Delhi, right? Since a few years ago, probably 3-4 years ago, since the Biden administration, they have announced this Indo-Pacific strategy. And many experts believe that it is a containment strategy, or at least hedging strategy against China. Under these circumstances, how do you think China-India relations can progress with this Indo-Pacific strategy, which may not be going away anytime soon?
Yes, that's in continuation of India-Russia relations. Just let me just say one more sentence. In that, India-Russia also has had a long-standing strategic relationship, partnership in military weapons and equipment, mainly for the purpose of purchasing weapons and equipment from Soviet Union and Russia. But of course, India has had good relations with the USA as well, not so much in the past as perhaps now. And this entire strategy and doctrine in the Indo-Pacific, as till now, till this Ukraine conflict broke out, the game was supposed to be played in the Indo-Pacific region. Europe was stable, but instability was to occur in the Indo-Pacific. And therefore, the strategy between India and USA, and of course in relation with China and all the partners and countries of the Indo-Pacific, it was important that we have an arrangement that we can ensure that this region, which was the growth center of the world, with China's rapid economic rise, East Asia and the Indo-Pacific region is by far the fastest growing economic growth region in the world. And so it was in the interest of the whole world to see that this region remains stable. So
well, do you think
sense,
India can somehow compartmentalize its
relations
relations? On one hand, strengthen the economic ties with China, strategic communications with China, and on the other hand, perhaps continue its military ties with Washington?
No, you're right, absolutely right. Today's relations cannot be compartmentalized. You have security relations with one country, strategic relations with somebody else. So it has to be a comprehensive relationship. And that is also, of course, India's objective, both with China and with the USA. We continue, this year our bilateral trade between India and China has crossed $100 billion together, with a very significant expansion. It did not reach that level for quite some time, though the target was set many years ago. So our relations with China is going very well economically. We have major concerns, as you all know, in our northern borders, where the territory remains undecided. Consequently, we had a major issue for the last 2-3 years, and I have been a part of that, some of the dialogue as well. We had a very major meeting in Chengdu, along with the very senior delegation of China 3 years ago, slightly outside the government, where we had addressed all these questions. And so in the Indo-Pacific, it is important to ensure that the developments that are taking place here, economic growth, the instabilities in many of the places, South China Sea and other questions, that are resolved in a peaceful manner. So therefore, India remains committed to work with all countries, not just with the 4 Quad countries, Japan, Australia, USA and India, but with others as well. And there have been many steps that India has taken in that direction. And so it is important for all of us to work together in that sense as well.
Major General Dipankar Banerjee, thank you so much for your time.
And as you know,
that's all the time we'll have. Please come back again soon to The Hub on CGTN. Thank you very much. You're watching The Hub. Stay tuned for my interview with Professor Wu Wei on the latest developments on Shanghai, COVID control and prevention, coming up after the short break.